Welcome back to the Myth Dimension podcast. I'm your host, Austin Arter, and I have an announcement to make. The Myth Dimension is a social media for writers to post, publish, and promote their works. We're currently in development with plans to launch later in 2025, but we have a Discord and it's currently exploding with new users. We have people talking about the books that they're writing, the books that they're reading, and everything in between. And if you would like to join, the link is down below, and welcome home. In this episode, we meet with Summer Weaver. Summer is currently working on Project Dive, an untitled debut novel set in a tropical high fantasy world. When a duty-bound native diver needs to learn how to heal, and a guilt-ridden foreign soldier needs to learn how to dive, they make a deal to train each other in secret. We talk about story inspirations, we talk about the challenges of being an unpublished author on social media, and how to overcome imposter syndrome. If you're a fan of Rebecca Ross's writing, big smiles, and an authentic look into the life of a full-time author, follow Summer on Instagram at Summer Weaver Writes, and enjoy. Starting it off, you've always been an adventurous person. I've read you've gone on humanitarian missions to India and Fiji. You grew up swinging off of ropes and practicing archery, and now you're writing your tropical epic fantasy. Could you tell me a little bit more about like the story behind The Wallet from Walter Mitty and what it means to you now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, you've done your homework, and thank you for listing off cool things I've done because now I don't have to brag about myself. I can just pretend to be humble. So it's perfect. Yes, the wallet. Okay, so I showed this question that you had sent to my husband, and he was very excited that I was going to talk about him very first thing in the interview because he's actually the person who made the wallet for me, and I have it right here. So it's like an exact replica. Like he painstakingly hand stamped the letters from the life quote on the inside as well. And he did this back when we were first just dating. And The Secret Life of Walter Mitty has been my favorite movie since like the second I saw the trailer. Like even before it had come into theaters, I saw it and I just knew. And I've always loved just that the theme of someone who's daydreamed of adventure and finally gets to have their own, and then also just the theme of finding beauty in the mundane. I think a lot of creative people connect with that. And I was laughing because your interview with Zach McDonald, he said this is also his favorite movie. I was like, of course it is, because as writers, we of course we love this idea of finding adventure and daydreaming about it and then going on your own. So, anyways, my husband made me this wallet when we were just dating. And on the front, he stamped our initials and then said, "For our adventure." And like, if I hadn't already thought about marrying him, then that would have sealed the deal right there. Because it was just a really thoughtful gift. And he could tell that that was something I cared about. So, yeah, I really love that.
Yeah. It's something that even like me and my partner shared where I introduced them to it. I grew up,
Awesome.
think I saw it in like 2017 or something like that. So I was like around 17, 18, and I found that it spoke to almost like the wanderlust, like the itch to go out and
Yes,
travel, the want to go do something, or and even like the want to make your life mean something, like make it overtly valuable to yourself, to other
absolutely.
people,
Yeah.
not just to be useful, but to make it something really deeply enjoyable. And I think that, like you said, like it speaks to writers. This is a personal theory. I think it speaks
Yeah.
to writers because of like the escapism. I think there's
Oh,
something
absolutely.
like the parallel of him going on those adventures and the things that he experiences and what you go through whenever you pick up like a new book. Like even when you go like into that like internal world of going through those stories, when you have like those really late night writing sessions or when the flow hits really
Oh,
well on one of those days
the
and you
best
are
feeling.
not on Earth. Yeah, I think there's
Yeah, yeah.
something in there that really just it like I like it as a almost like a barometer of if you like that movie, I know who you are and we have something in common immediately.
Absolutely. That's how I feel too. Because I know so many people who are like, yeah, it was good, but I wouldn't watch it again. Like they just didn't connect with it in the same way because they just didn't relate to that Walter Mitty character. So I love that you connected as well.
As soon as I saw the wallet, I was like, I have to bring this up. This is so cool.
Of course. I'm glad you did.
Of course. You tend to like just speaking about this, you tend to deep dive on a lot of stuff that you do. You're not only very intentional, with the work that you put in, but you also tend to make sure that it's of a high quality before it ever comes out. I mean, case in point, you've been working on Project Dive for a year, 2 years now?
Yeah, I started writing it. I did NaNoWriMo for the first time ever writing fiction. I decided to just dive all in. And so I did NaNoWriMo in 2023. So it's been over a year now that I've been working on it. Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. Even like with your world building, like I saw like I've seen like the maps that you've done with your son where you got him to paint it, which is very,
Yeah.
very cute, by the way.
Thank you.
I've seen you dive deep on, not pun not intended. I've seen you go really, really deep with your intention behind like the different peoples of the world and like the almost like the I want to say mysticism, but like the magic that you get out of it, it feels almost like watching Hook, like the old Robin Williams movie of like you feel like you're being transported.
Yeah.
And that's just from like watching the social media posts about it. Do you feel any
Awesome.
pressure with like making sure the attention to detail on even like small things like Surfer's Ear is present in the story?
Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned surfer's ear because I've had to do so much research regarding ears just for the fact of diving. And I'll give you an example of like a way because I have done so much research for this project. And it's tricky as writers because we do all this research behind the scenes, but then very rarely does that actually make it onto the page. It's usually woven into the world building or the characters, but it's not something we can like show off and be like, look how much research I've done. So one small way that I've kind of incorporated my research is with equalizing your ears while diving. If you've ever scuba dived or anything or like gone deep in a pool, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And one contrast I'm kind of setting up for my character Peter, who's trying to learn how to free dive, is when he's first learning, he has the king's soldiers teaching him what to do. And they have an interesting strategy where they view the ocean as something to fight against. And so they teach him to just like plug your nose and blow and like make your ears pop and keep going deeper. Like they're just very driven and they're there to get Runa, which is the magic, healing magic that everyone's fighting for. And so he learns that as his first method, and it's not the best for your ears, so don't go out and try that. And then it's an interesting contrast when he later meets Kaiva, who's my other main character, and she has a very different way of approaching diving. And so she teaches him a way to equalize his ears that is very natural. And she just teaches him to like move with the ocean and work with it. And it's a lot less of that battle fighting against nature. So that's just like one small example of how I'm incorporating the hours of research I've done on freediving specifically into the narrative. But as far as like world building goes, honestly, my first draft, I was intimidated by world building. And this is my first attempt at fiction writing, which I mentioned. And so my early draft, a lot of it was very similar to like real life Earth. You know, I didn't really create new creatures. I was kind of intimidated by that whole process. Like I wrote the story with a setting in mind that I wanted to dive into, but I didn't really dive into it. And now that I'm doing this draft too, I can really just go crazy and have fun with the world building. And it is complex because I'm creating this new island culture and I'm being really careful not to borrow too heavily from existing cultures because I want this to be a unique fantasy world. I don't want it to feel like I'm stealing anything from existing cultures. So I'm creating a new culture, I'm creating new ocean creatures for them to interact with. It's really, really fun. And I am taking my time doing it because I want to be very intentional about all of these world building elements and doing the research and taking the time to do it properly. So yeah, I'm glad you asked about ears because that is something I have researched a lot of.
It's like I asked about that specifically because of two parts. So both of my parents are from Newfoundland. I don't know if you know where that is in Canada.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I haven't been
Yeah,
there, but yeah, that's cool.
yeah. So I grew up a Newfoundlander. We spent like every summer there, and it's like a very much a part of my of who I am and the heritage. But my dad became a scuba diver when he was really young, maybe like 12 or 13, in the Atlantic Ocean. When my parents ended up going to Ontario, where I grew up, he kept the habit, the hobby, and taught me how to dive, how taught me how to free dive, taught me how to scuba
Ooh,
dive. We would go
no
out to
way.
like a lot of lakes and stuff, and like one of like I have so many memories of, I would be 13 years old, free diving, like sunken plains and things like that, or like doing smaller underwater caves and like finding crayfish and going for lobsters and even like swimming in the ocean was always a really really big thing. And it mentioned the swimmer's ear because I would always get earaches when I was a kid because of the cold, but my dad never
Mm.
had it. And he had grown some sort of a tolerance to it and he didn't really know what it was. And he had all of these tips and tricks and kind of like the stories behind it and like other people. It was almost like this word of mouth, layman's style of communication, like just from diver to diver. And it wasn't until I took an archaeology class in university, and they said that we are able to tell nautical cultures apart, or if somebody had a specific job within a culture, because of those bone growths on the inside of your ear that you get from diving repetitively throughout your life. And they look for
That's
that specifically in
fascinating.
like really old coastal cultures. So that's why I wanted to bring it up because like that was my moment of like, oh, like that's me. Like I get it. And
That's
I've even
fascinating. Yeah.
like in my own projects thought about how to use like nautical mythology and like this almost like community that's passed down in just nautical culture itself too, of how to navigate, again, pun not intended, these underwater worlds, like how to really
Absolutely.
exist in tandem with the ocean.
Yes, yes. I just love the whole concept of this setting kind of acting as its own character in a story and having such an influence on the culture and the people and the characters. So I love that. That's so interesting that you were experiencing it, but your dad wasn't. That's really crazy. So did you have surfer's ear? Like, did you have the bone growth and that's what was causing the earaches?
I don't know. I never got it checked
That's
out,
so
but I don't
interesting.
think I dived enough for it to
Okay.
develop. I dived like pretty
Right.
heavily as a kid. I think I dropped off of it maybe 14, 15-ish. So I'm not sure, but it's one of those things where this is really nerdy. There's a part of me that almost wants to go out of my way to develop it so that all archaeologists in the future will think I'm cool. I've thought about it. I've thought about it.
Like this guy really lived. That's awesome.
Oh, this guy's sick.
Yeah. See, that's amazing. It's one of my goals. Like sometime before this book is published, I feel like I have to take a proper free diving lesson because I feel like otherwise, what am I doing? And so I've done scuba diving lots of times, but I've
Okay.
never actually been taught how to free dive. I've done all the research on my own. But the more I research it, the scarier it gets in my mind, just because it really is like things can go wrong. It is an extreme sport, but I feel like the people who've actually done it aren't intimidated by it. Like they see that it's really peaceful and meditative. It's really cool.
I like it more than scuba diving. I
I
think with
believe
scuba,
that. Yeah.
yeah, I think that with scuba diving, I'd never liked paying attention to like the weights. I never really liked paying attention to the equipment. The oxygen always didn't like freak me out, but I was always like overly attentive to it, and I think it took away from the experience of it. But with free diving, I always swam without flippers as well. I don't know why, I just felt like I was faster and better with it. With free diving, it felt like not only I was more in control, but I had less to worry about, and I felt like I could stay under longer in a weird way because I just had to check in with myself if I wanted to. Like if I ran out of
Yeah.
breath and that was it, and that was really my only indicator. And so it freed me up to be in the underwater world, like to float there, to take my own time, to do my own pacing, to understand the dive and like stages of when am I going to resurface for air? I'm going to do that one next, where to move to different things. I don't know. It was like this nice freedom that allowed me to explore it more in a weird way. I just always gravitated towards it more.
Absolutely. You didn't have that additional barrier between you and the ocean. I absolutely love that. You would get along very well with Kaifa in my book. That's really cool.
I believe it. I think that's really, really cool. I actually wanted to, this is kind of skipping. I
That's
wanted to
fine. That's
talk
fine.
about when you were in university, you wrote a paper titled "From Sea to Waterless Sea: Archipelagic Thought and Reorientation in When the Emperor Was Divine." It was based off of a Julie Otsuka novel, and part of the abstract reads, "Rather than serving as an actor in disorientation, the ancient sea actually enables reorientation, affording the characters a new understanding of their self and their place." Was there any inspiration or ideas that span off of that? Was that something that was sitting in the back of your mind while you were going through first drafts or ideas for Project Dive? Is there any sense of that The sense of self that you get when you're met with nothing else in something as big as the ocean. What was the thought process with that?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought this up. This was my master's thesis. So congrats, you found it. It's in the internet. But yeah, this is something that I poured my heart and soul into in my academic career. So I'm very happy to chat about it. If you haven't read Julie Otsuka's novel, When the Emperor Was Divine, it's really short, but it's absolutely stunning. And it's a fictional telling of what actually happened to people when they were brought to the Japanese American imprisonment camp in Topaz, Utah, which I was able to visit during my undergrad, or this was during my master's program. Yeah, during my program, I was able to go visit it and see the site where these people lived. And it's fascinating because this area in the desert used to be covered by an ancient sea, way, 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 millions, billions of years ago. I don't remember. But it's fascinating because throughout the book and throughout other narratives I've read of this internment camp as well, so much of what the people connected with were reminders of their ocean home because they were taken from the coast on Berkeley, the California coast, and they were taken to this middle of the desert, but they kept finding seashells and trilobites, or they would have seagulls flying overhead. And that oceanic imagery was just woven into all of the stories that were told and the jewelry that they made. Like the ocean was just everywhere. And I think that that brought them such a sense of home when they were stolen from their homes. I think there's something really powerful about just finding that sense of place and reorienting oneself with the ocean. Like if you've ever lived near the coast, which just sounds like you have, that's like your sense of direction is like, okay, ocean's that way. I know where to go. Like, and so I think they were able to find that in the desert, which is really fascinating. So yes, that's what I wrote my master's thesis on. And absolutely, I can see that popping up in different places in my fictional work. Because so much of what I studied in grad school had to do with trauma and island studies, which is basically Project Dive, is what it's dealing with. And so I can definitely see I'm dealing a lot with how my two characters are overcoming their traumatic pasts in different ways. Peter is the type to kind of run away from his trauma and bury it, whereas Kaiva is the type to face it head on and decide, I'm never going to let this happen again to anyone else. And so I'm dealing with trauma and then I'm bringing in the island setting to kind of see how they interact with it. So yeah, it's definitely a love letter to all the research that I did in my master's program, and I'm excited to bring it to life and hopefully bring these themes to a wider audience because I doubt anyone has ever read my actual master's thesis that I wrote.
That's really, really interesting. And I find, okay, on two parts as a fan, I'm really, really excited for the book now. Like that immediately sold me of like, I don't know, I think it's
That's
like just the
awesome.
correct amount of nerdy where I'm like, okay, I'm in. Um,
Perfect.
and then even like as a person where it's funny you mentioned that because so Newfoundland had a fishing crisis in like the 70s, 80s-ish, I think. And that's why like a lot of people ended up migrating more inland, more towards Ontario for work and jobs. That's why my parents ended up moving out as well. There's just not a whole lot happening on Newfoundland anymore. And all growing up, two things were true. If anybody came from Newfoundland, they had to bring something with them to give to somebody in the family as like a reminder or a token of home. It could be anything from Nanny B's homemade strawberry jam because we have the wild strawberries that grow on the cliff faces of Newfoundland near the Atlantic Ocean.
Amazing.
So we'd go out and pick those and we make jam with them. Or it was a seashell, it was a conch shell, a sand dollar, something. You had to bring something that reminded them of home. Bonus points if it still smelled like Newfoundland too. Salt
I
water and
love
all.
that.
And the second thing, and I know this is a fact for all Newfoundlands everywhere, Newfoundlanders everywhere, we always say down home. Even if you weren't born in Newfoundland, we say it's down home. I'm going down home this summer. I'm going back home.
No.
And it's even if you've been, my mom moved when she was 16. She's 46 now. It's down home. Never
I
left her.
love
She's
that.
spent almost double the time that she ever spent in Newfoundland. She spent in other places. It's down home, regardless.
That's
And
awesome.
so I know that what you're speaking about is true. And that master's thesis, it hits a bit different.
Oh,
So
I love that. That's so cool. Yeah. Do you get to go down home very often?
not as much as I would like, which I think
Yeah.
is also a common sentiment in Newfoundlanders.
Yeah.
It's something that I feel I don't think I've been back since I was 16. I'm 24 now. I've been wanting to do so. I'm moving to BC this summer.
Oh,
I'm
cool.
moving out to the West Coast. I want to try out the Pacific, see if it shapes up, make sure it's behaving itself. But I would really, really love to do a coast to coast trip, do a road trip. Um,
Absolutely.
Also because I've never been to Newfoundland as an adult, and I think it would be really fun to just like do the round, like do the whole coast around, or like even go straight through. I know there's a lot of national parks in Newfoundland. I don't know, like visit some family, something. It's kind of it's percolating. It's
Oh,
like an
yeah.
idea in the back of my mind. So yeah,
Well, I
not as
hope
much
you
as I
do
would like,
it.
but I hope so.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Watch Walter Mitty. It'll inspire you and you'll go do it. It's
I'm
perfect.
going now tonight.
I know I have to like limit how often I watch that movie because it will make me want to like go buy plane tickets. So I hope you do that. That sounds amazing. That'd be really cool.
I was talking with my sister this morning. So my father had a wedding. He's in Punta Cana in the Caribbean, I think, right now with my sister. And they were talking this morning about my little sister's mermaid obsession growing up. She watched H2O, Aquamarine, Mermaidtopia, all of the Barbie movies, like
Love it.
on repeat from maybe 8 years old to maybe 12 years old. And of course, because it was on repeat and she would throw a tantrum if anything else was changed, I was forced to sit side by side with her on the couch and watch it with her.
That's
And
amazing.
there was like a certain, I don't remember where, but I was going through, I was prepping for this interview and I was going through your Instagram account and something kind of like clicked it in. And I remember the scene in Aquamarine where she's a mermaid in like the swimming pool and the storm had just happened and it felt like gritty and personal and vulnerable in a way that I don't really see mermaid movies do it. And I don't know why I thought it because I know that mermaids aren't really a part of your story. But something just it like clicked that like almost like an old film reel and it started rolling and then right after it was Nim's Island and like this island adventure and her relationship with the ocean and like the boundaries that it represents and the freedom it has afterwards or even Journey to the Center of the Earth, the old one, and like all of the things that happen in the center of the earth and like this grandiose fantastical adventure. And I wanted to ask if there was like a specific influence, whether it was a movie or a book or some sort of accumulation over time that ended up becoming the basis for Project Dive.
I love this question. And I love that your sister was the one who like dragged you down to watch these shows because I haven't seen Aquamarine, but it sounds like maybe something I should look into. But I have a distinct memory of like two or three H2O episodes because my mom and my sister were watching them together. And one day they were like, you have to see this. And they sat me down. And I was like a little older at the time. And so I remember thinking, this is a little young for me. But they're like mermaids in Australia, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah. So it's the same show. So, anyways, I've only seen a couple episodes of that, but I'm glad that we had the similar experience of our sisters making us watch that. I'll have to go back and try it again. But yeah, sadly, no mermaids in Project Dive, but I can tell you what started the like seed for the idea because it really is a case study in how crazy our minds are and like the things we latch onto. So I had seen well before I came up with this idea, I had seen a video of the Pool of Bethesda, like the New Testament story, where it was like this spring that would occasionally bubble up. And the people believed that if you were the first to touch it when it bubbled, then you would be healed. And I saw this video, and for some reason, it must have like stuck in my mind because many, many months later, I just thought like, okay, what if we like made this at a much larger scale? And what if suddenly it was like an oceanic vent that was bubbling up? And what if there were islands and the people living on these islands would race to the center and I was like, okay, that sounds cool. How could we up the stakes? Oh, what if they have to free dive down to collect whatever healing substance this is? So, anyways, that was like the seed that was planted that first made me kind of think about it. And it's totally unconnected to the book now. It has nothing to do with that, but it was just cool to see how my brain held this image for so long. And then it just finally clicked and turned into a full idea that I've now adapted into its own thing. But, yeah, interesting. I should watch more mermaid stuff though.
I actually think I just thought about this now. When I was going through rewatching Secret Life of Walter Mitty over and over and over, there is a smaller TV show. I think it's on Amazon Prime, or at least it was, about two locals to Brantford, Ontario, which was like 20 minutes outside of where I lived. Justin Lukács and oh, I'm gonna forget his name. Scott something. Scott Wilson, I want to say. And they made it was two college kids, or like freshly out of college. They were like maybe mid 20s, and they had separated, hadn't talked to each other in a couple of years. Um, and they said, like it was a kind of like an email chain back and forth, and they were like, we have to travel the world. We're running out of time. We're eventually going to settle down and have kids, and we're going to kind of lose the want to do it and the time to do it. So it's really like we're going to get the best bang for buck if we go now. And it is like an indie shot, like self shot. It was just the three of them that went. It was them and their friend Andre, and they did coast to coast across Canada. They did to not Peru. What am I thinking about? They did end up doing Peru. They did like 3 seasons. It was called Departures. Really, really good. Scratches the exact same age as Walter Mitty. It is very
Okay.
like small and everything. After that show, um, Scott Wilson ended up breaking off to do his own show called Descent, I think. And that was about him free diving and scuba diving in like the underwater world. And it was shot in the exact same way. It was
No
shot
way.
with the same like soul feeling of I have this want to learn what the world is really, really about. And I think that belongs under the surface of the ocean. And it's really good. I think
Oh my
that,
gosh.
yeah, if anything should be on your watch list, I really think that should be it.
Okay, so you said Descent was the freediving one, and then Departures was the first one?
Departures. Yeah,
Okay, I'm sold. Yeah, that's those both sound so fascinating. Yeah, that sounds amazing. Adding those to the watch list for sure.
absolutely. Speaking of the watch list, you had a very near miss where you almost auditioned to be Katniss Everdeen in the Hunger Games movie. Whatever happened with that email? And were there any other stories that influenced you as a kid or even influenced you into becoming an author or going down the writing rabbit hole?
Yes, so first things first, I have a lot of clarifying to do. There is no universe where I could have gotten anywhere near auditioning for Katniss Everdeen. This was just my mom being so sweet and seeing that I loved the books, and she had a blog, and she thought, what would happen if I were to just make a blog post? I don't think she ever even emailed like casting directors. I don't think she even knew how to do that at the time. But she just believed in me, and I had all sorts of Katniss-like photos because I loved the book so much. So of course I had to get a bow and arrow. Of course I had to like learn how to build fires and do all these things. I was just an awkward 13-year-old kid, so had no chance of auditioning. But I thought it was so sweet that she was like genuinely believed like if I put this blog post out there, maybe they'll see it. So no, nothing ever came of it other than some really embarrassing comments from like grandmas and aunts in the comments of the blog post. But yeah, so I absolutely love the Hunger Games. That actually, fun fact, I do think that the second movie where it's the ocean arena, I think that also kind of played into the image that I had held in my
Okay.
mind for so long, where they're racing towards the cornucopia in the middle. Like I could see that also kind of playing into how I came up with Project Dive. Because yeah, I absolutely love those books and the movies. I think were really well done. But I have been a fantasy fan for my whole life. So I have grown up reading fantasy books. Like I started with Redwall, if you read the Redwall series with the little mice. Then I moved on to like Fablehaven, Ranger's Apprentice, which again had a bow and arrow. So of course I had to have that. But yeah, those types of series I just absolutely latched onto. And then it wasn't even until adulthood that I discovered like Brandon Sanderson, read every single book I could get my hands on. And it's just kind of grown and developed since then. And the only time I really stopped reading fantasy was when I was in college studying English literature and had all these other more like highbrow books that I was required to read. But part of me really, really missed the fantasy element and just going back to the books that I loved as a child. So now I love that I can kind of like bring the elements of the more quote unquote highbrow, because I think all literature should be read, but those quote unquote highbrow books, bringing some of those themes into the fantasy that I loved. And I'm excited to see more and more widespread fantasy readers coming because I think there's like a new wave of fantasy, which I'm excited about.
I think so. I think like conveniently Brandon Sanderson is leading that charge. I'm actually going through his work for like the
Absolutely.
first time.
Oh,
Yeah.
yay.
I finished the Mistborn trilogy over last summer, and then I have 3 hours left on the Way of Kings audiobook, which is I think like 80 hours long.
That's
So
an
I've been putting
accomplishment.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm almost there. It's really, really good. And I think even with like Sanderson, I see so many philosophical concepts or like not even themes of the story or like morals of the story, but genuine, heartfelt like conclusions, I almost want to say, like these
Yes.
these genuine thought trains that deserve to be preserved and pursued that are illuminating of some part of the human condition, communicated through fantasy characters and through fantasy plot in some really like tear-jerking ways, like kind of like almost um not irrelevant. What's the word that I'm thinking about? Uh I've lost it. It'll come to me. But it's
No
very
worries.
abnormal in a way. It's unusual. And I even see that with this, like you said, the fantasy revolution. Like I've gotten into Rebecca Ross's work, The Divine Rivals. I'm seeing a lot more academic rivals. She even inspired me to write academic rivals to
Oh my
lovers in my
gosh.
book. So good.
She's one of my
It's
favorite authors right now. So her and Brandon Sanderson, like you know how people talk about like your I think it was even Brandon Sanderson who talked about this, like if as a writer, you can look at like who your mother and father are, like who are the authors you learned from. I think for me it's if I could have Rebecca Ross and Brandon Sanderson and like kind of merge their two styles into my own style. Oh my gosh, I love them both.
Mhm. I think I don't know who mine would be. I feel like Rick Riordan definitely did something to my brain. I
Yes.
was a Percy
Oh
Jackson
yeah,
kid. Yeah,
absolutely.
there's something in that in the way that he wrote, but specifically in the way that he wrote like character progression and character growth, where confidence was something that you could learn and not something that you were born with. That
Mhm.
was, yeah, that one really did a number on my brain. I'm
Oh
trying to
yeah.
think of like other authors that just have like a high impact or even like revolutionizing the field. It feels like it's both so many of them that are so good, but also like a handful that you can point to and say, if you have to start with anybody, go there.
Right,
And I
right. Yeah.
really, really love that.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually been itching to reread Percy Jackson because I read them as a teenager and haven't since. And I've been wanting to reread them so badly because I remember absolutely loving them, but some of the details I've lost over the years. So I'm
Hmm.
excited to do a reread soon.
That'd be interesting. I would be interested to see how like draft three, draft four change on Project Dive if you reread it soon.
I'll come up with really goofy chapter titles, I'm sure. I'll be inspired to do that.
Yeah. Do you uh do you have like a writing playlist? Do you have some sort of like environment that you get into? Do you have like a ritual for getting into the mode to do writing? What does that look like? What's like your happy space in which the ideas are free flowing?
Yeah, so ideally, I would be in a quiet room by myself and not have any interruptions, but I have two young children, so that doesn't happen very often. But on the moments where I do have, usually it's during nap time if my kids take a good nap, but it's often late at night. I'm not a night owl, but I'm turning into one just driven by the desire to create. And so it's usually late at night in our guest room slash office. I've merged the two. I write in there. And I wish that I could write to music with lyrics because I have crafted a book playlist that I am obsessed with for this book, where every song is like so carefully picked out and meaningful, but no one will ever appreciate it but me. But I can't even write to it because I get too distracted when I'm writing to songs with lyrics. So occasionally I'll do like I'll try out different things like instrumental or lo-fi, but honestly, sometimes I just write in silence because you get, like you said earlier, you just like transport to another world. Like when you're really in the zone, it's like you don't even hear or see anything but the world you're writing, and it's the coolest feeling ever. And I've noticed I can only do that when I have a decent chunk of writing time. And so it's usually late at night when I'm just by myself and I can really get into that headspace. If I'm kind of like doing little bits and pieces during the day with my kids around, it's usually some like beta reading for a friend or some editing. I usually can't get into that headspace unless it's like late at night by myself.
There is there's almost like something to be said about like late night writing versus early morning writing or like the specific scenes and how they change, the prose changes, the descriptions changes, and even somehow like how you think about your characters changes depending on the mindset and the space in which you have to write, which I think
Yeah,
is such a mark in quality, or even like this like artistic inspiration almost, where I feel like I'm going full circle back into Jane Austen sitting under a tree with a pen and paper to like really get the integrity in there, you know?
love it. Yeah, have you ever tried the 5 a.m. Writers Club? I know that's a thing some people do where you have you tried that?
I have. I did. So this is okay. This is a little bit embarrassing. Um, Way back when I was first starting to write, I think I started writing or really trying and dedicating myself to writing a book. I was maybe 16 or 17, and there was so much conflicting advice about the right way or the right time to write. Um, I ended up making like a schedule almost, like a routine. I would say closer to an itinerary of I picked out my top authors that I would love to imitate, and I researched what made their routines work, cut out all of the fluff. Like if it was something really, really simple, like I always drink tea and never coffee. I was like, all right, whatever. But like writing times and writing environments and stuff, and I just went down the list until I found something that scratched the itch. And I'd even um, I mean, I've traveled to Montreal to write before. I used to be a freelance world builder, so people would hire me to do all sorts of crazy stuff to like write and world build for their stories. And I had one guy who hired me to go north to go see the Northern Lights because he wanted me to be able to describe it properly in a story.
No
So
way.
like I've had like a lot of environments in which I was able to write like, the back of a train or like sitting in some random guy's truck hitchhiking, being able like back of a school, all sort like on a lunch break out doing a 9 to 5, like all sorts of different times and places and methods, whether it's pen and paper, whether it's computer. I've never tried e-ink, but I would be open to it. So I think I naturally tend to do my best drafting first thing in the morning. I usually get up around 5:30 a.m. anyways, just because I find that it kind of gives me the jump on my day that I really like. I never feel like time's escaping from me. I do my routine, and then around 6:30 a.m., like right as it's getting light, like the sun is fully in the sky, I sit down and do my drafting, and I'll do maybe 3 or 4 30-minute sprints. Not really sprints because they're kind of longer term, but I like having like the little pocket. It's does
Yeah,
something to
yeah.
my brain. Yeah, so like
Love that.
kind of counts. I've tried the 5 a.m. before and it works, but I find that like fresh start to the day, like after I have nothing else that I need to do, I'm off
Mhm.
to the races.
There you go. That's smart because then you don't have stuff weighing on you. Yeah, I get that.
Hmm.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, it sounds like you had the coolest job ever where you were sent out to world build for people. How did you get into that? That's amazing.
I am really good at starting books. I'm horrible at finishing them. I have
It's a
nine
hard thing to
ongoing
do.
book projects.
No way. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. That's amazing that you even came up with 9 ideas is really cool. But I get that it's got to be frustrating to feel like you haven't finished any of those.
It's okay. So here's the thing. I started the book. I finished my first draft of my first ever book and I hated it. Like,
Oh
which is
no.
it's common for authors. So I was like, all right. I kind of it was kind of like whenever you're making scrambled eggs for the first time, you got to do a couple of, toss out the windows before you
Yeah.
get it really right. Um, Nowadays, I'll skip and then I'll get back to how I started. I have 9 ongoing projects that I am either drafting or actively plotting on, and I have probably around guesstimate 30 on the back burner that I'm probably going to be writing over the next 15
No
years.
way.
I am very picky.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm really, really picky with what I write. I'm very much a plotter, like architect to the core. I
Mhm.
don't like discovery writing. I want to know what I'm doing before I do it.
Gotcha.
So each plot point needs to be very particular, and every character needs to have like the perfect arc, and it needs to be as close to the original vision as I can get it. Because usually the inspiration will strike me with like a really solid 30-second, almost like a movie clip, and then I have to fill in the blank of what happens after. Um, and depending on where in the movie that clip takes place is where my problems start. So I'm getting pretty close on book one, but I'm so picky that I just kind of I'm hands off. I'm not promising anything until like 30 years old, and at that point, I'm probably going to be like, all right, I have to do something. I got to finish one.
Right, right.
But yeah, so that's kind of like my hobby build. Because of that, I'm really good at plotting. I'm really good at world building.
I
Drafting I'm
bet.
good at, but like the kind like I know how to do the late game, but it's just like it's not for me. Like I'm like I'm not
Mhm.
yet, not yet. I'm not ready to show it off to the world. Still behind
Yeah.
closed doors. I wanted to make money off of writing though. I know that I want to do this for a living. So my options were either work at a bookstore or actually finish the book. So I worked in a
Mm.
bookstore. I worked in a bookstore for like 6 months. I've
Awesome.
done like book shipping. I got into publishing. I went to college for writing to publish. And I can't, I think I was probably like 19 and I was like, okay, I have to bite the bullet. I actually have to do something. I know that freelance writing is a thing. I've heard about it. So I did some research and it didn't feel like it was me. It didn't feel like it was right. So I ended up saying, okay, I don't think there's any freelance world builders, but it's freelance and it doesn't have to be full time yet. So I'm just going to put it out and see if I get any hits. And my first ever project, I was on Fiverr and I put it up for $5, thinking nobody's insane enough to buy this. And somehow somebody bought it. And I was like
Awesome.
over the moon.
That's
And like
awesome.
from there, I think I spent maybe 4 or 5 years as a full-time world builder. I've worked on indie video games, I've worked on TV shows, I've done movies, I've done so many books. I've helped maybe ballpark of 50 to 75 authors get published,
Oh
just
my
by helping
gosh,
them out with
that's
their
so
world building.
cool. Yeah.
So I've worked on sci-fis, I've done fantasies, I've done cosmic horrors. Um, I got into it because I really love sitting down with an author and talking about the very specialized things of what goes on in the world and then building that on the foundation of it has to make sense in the story. So,
Right.
for example, I think I'm going to say this one because I know that I'm out of the NDA for it. I was helping this one author with interdimensional travel, I want to say, in a science fiction story. It was somewhat like Interstellar, but he wanted it to make it more horror based. So we came up with the idea that going through like a wormhole or subverting reality to go through like the like in between dimensions, to, wormhole skip a whole space. um, it should be very terrifying and very strange. And the basis of it was what lies outside of the universe that we might not be able to see. I wanted it to be very cosmic horror, so I wanted these things to be so adamant about being able to get into the ship because that was the only way that they would be able to break into the universe and become real. And anything that they were was unreal. So you would see um, your little sister floating outside of the spaceship and you know it's not her but you're not quite sure because it sounds so real, or you see like
Oh
a giant
yeah.
leviathan thing swimming by and you don't know if that's what it actually looks like or that's what it's trying to look like for you, and having these strange, almost like an underwater, deep sea horror feel to it. And so we were going back and forth and like, what are these creatures? What are their aims? What does it mean for the story? Does it have any plot relevance? But at some point, it has to become like prose or a description. It has to be exposition, and it has to rely on three-act structure. It needs to be hero's journey, whatever it needs to be. In that, I like those rules. It's almost like a creative puzzle solving in a way, and that's
Yeah,
what
yeah,
like
totally.
really made me fall in love with it. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, that sounds absolutely terrifying and also so fascinating and cool that you got to work on that. That's awesome.
hmm I like it a lot. It was pretty cool. I do a lot of writing
That's a
coaching now,
fun
and then
job.
I also I don't know if how much like deep diving you've done on the myth dimension itself.
I've glanced around it and I'm excited because you said you're about to launch it, right? You haven't quite launched it yet. That's
hmm
exciting. And you have a Discord channel going. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah, so the Myth Dimension is a social media for authors. And the idea around it was I really don't like how many authors are spread out into every corner of the internet. I feel like there's no
Mhm.
interconnectivity. I feel like
Yeah.
there's places for artists to be artists. I feel like there's places for video content creators to be content creators. There's no real place for writers to just be writers. And I
Mhm.
wanted to be able to build a platform that benefits the written word first and also allows you to talk about your story in the interim of it not being done yet and still get rewarded for it. Because it sucks to be on a timeline of 2 to 3 years and you still aren't published, but you can't really call yourself like a career author, even though you're pouring your entire life, day in and day out, your entire creative juices. You're saying no to hang out with friends to do this, but you have nothing to show for it yet. And that sucks. It really sucks.
It
So
does.
yeah, I've been creating, it's a lot of things to develop, but I wanted to create systems and ways that you would be able to monetize your work before it's fully out, whether that's chapter by chapter publishing, whether that's cut scenes and backstories. The example I always use is when Brad Bird was writing The Incredibles, the movie that we both know is the third draft. There was an original copy of The Incredibles in which Helen had an ex-boyfriend who was an immortal supervillain, and he was convinced that he could win Helen back and steal the two kids. And that's what the island was originally for. They ended up
No
scrapping it because they
way.
didn't think it was family friendly, and that's how everything else happened. That Syndrome was like a third draft revision antagonist. The old guy was scrapped. How much would you want to see that old story of The Incredibles, this scrapped previous like prequel of what Helen might have been?
That's fascinating. I
And
would
like,
love to see that. Yeah.
yeah. And like even us as writers, like you with Project Dive and like all of the characters that you've been through or all of the islands that you might have scrapped in the interim, like things that have you've passed through revision rounds, even if it was way early in the process, I think you should be able to benefit from because people who love your stuff, like for example, you've amassed an audience that is so large it could fit the BMO Stadium in LA. You've 30,000 followers and they love it. You haven't even figured out a name for your book yet.
No, I
That's
haven't.
insane.
I know
Yeah.
it's insane.
Yeah.
Actually, I love that you mentioned a stadium because my husband loves to mess with me. And he just the other day, like he likes to pull up every time I hit like a new follower count. He keeps track more than I do. And he likes to mess with me and be like, this is how many people follow you. And he'll show me a picture of just like a massive stadium. And it always freaks me out because it
Yeah.
really is crazy. Like I am not published. I have like it'll be a while before I'm even querying, and yet people are still there for me, which I really appreciate. So it is cool that people are interested in seeing the writing process, even if there's no book yet to read. So I think
Yeah.
the myth dimension is going to be filling a huge gap where authors really want this, and other fans and writers also want this. So that's really cool.
I really hope so. Like I really only got into writing for a living because I want to see better stories in the world. I
Yeah.
really don't want to retire and there just be garbage stories everywhere I go or me having read all of the good ones. I think that more writers deserve their kudos because even having like an Instagram follower count, or even if traditional publishing doesn't go through, there are so many good stories. There are so many good authors that even just scrolling through Instagram, I physically can't follow them all. And that
Right,
hurts.
right. I know every time. Yeah.
I wanted to ask you actually, because you're a full-time mom, you're working on your debut
Mhm.
book, you've amassed all of this following, but you still have this like nervousness around the literary agents you've mentioned wanting to traditionally publish and all of the uncertainties. Is there like what has your experience been being an unpublished author and still developing yourself on social media?
Yeah, so I like this question because I actually just had a chance to ask an agent about this. I'm not in the querying stage yet. I've written one very bad draft of a query letter just to like set it aside so I can come back to it later. But there was a Q&A with CC Lyra. I don't know if you've ever heard the podcast the stuff you don't know about writing, but they don't say stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? So she's one of the agents on that podcast, and she did a Q&A, and there was only like 20 of us on the live Q&A. So I got to ask her a question. So I asked what authors should be trying to do as they're trying to build a presence on social media. And what she said surprised me and also made me feel a lot better because she said, if your plan is to traditionally publish, you are not responsible for marketing your own book. You don't need to be posting snippets and trying to like tease it out and like get people interested in your book. Your whole purpose of having a social media account is just to build a literary presence and to be a literary citizen and interacting with the bookish world and like showing what you're reading and what your writing process is like because the publishers who are going to be interested in picking you up are going to be wanting to see that side of you, that personality side of you, and they're not going to want you to like try to advertise your own novel. That made me feel so much better because what I have been doing with my content is just like showing my personality, being a little bit goofy. And so it made me feel good, like, okay, I'm doing the right thing because I didn't want it to feel like, let me try to sell you something that's not even close to being published yet. So it was a big relief for me to hear that from an agent where they aren't looking for me to be really good at marketing. They're just looking for us to like show our personalities and show that we can interact and be a literary citizen. So that was a big relief for me. And that definitely takes some of the pressure off. I know I was really hesitant to start a writing account. I had many friends who had started their writing accounts and were having fun with it, but I saw the pressure they were under to feel like they had to be posting daily or like multiple times a week. And when I first started, I finally gave in and started an account and I posted every single day for a long time. And I kept telling myself, I won't let this impact my writing. I won't let it like I'll have time to do both. But I looking back, I can see when I was posting every day, so much of my creative energy was going into that that it really did take away from my writing time. I was kind of in denial in the moment, but I can see now like so much of my creative energy, it can only go so far. And so now I'm really guarding my writing time more seriously. And you'll notice I'll take 2 weeks off of posting and then come back in and post a few and then disappear again because I really do want writing to be the priority. And so I think it was a relief to hear that it's okay to take breaks. Like you, especially, I don't have the pressure that self-published authors have or the people who are already published. I don't have that pressure outside that's like urging me to post more. I can just do it when I want to and when it's fun. So I do really appreciate being unpublished. It has some benefits where I can just pop in and say hi and then go away and keep writing. You know, there's a lot less, there's lower stakes for me right now.
Do you think the pressure is self-imposed, or do you feel like it comes from the community? Like, is it from other authors that you see?
Oh, my pressure is always self-imposed. I always am like trying to do better. But I think there is, specifically with time, is when I feel the most pressure, is just feeling like I don't have enough time. Like I see other authors moving through their process so much faster, where like they wrote their draft slower than I did, but they're editing so much faster and boom, they're already querying. And I look at that and it is tempting to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm already falling behind. But then I realize, okay, I have two young kids. I have maybe like 15 minutes a day to myself. Like it really is okay that I'm in a busier stage of life and I don't have to be working at the same pace as other people. I am in no rush and I realize I'm kind of privileged in that sense where I'm not trying to financially support my family right now. I am writing because that's what I want to be doing. And it's different for people who are trying to financially support themselves. So I am blessed in the sense that I can take more time. But yeah, that pressure to be faster is always there. I do feel like I am a fast drafter and I have the ability to like pump out novels faster if I wanted to. But I like that right now I can kind of take my time with it, still be with my kids all day and then write when I can. So yeah, the pressure is definitely self-imposed and I'm learning to ease off and to give myself more time and more grace and try to compare a little bit less. Yeah.
Even when like being a reader as a kid and then going through university for English and like the literature hump, like the hall that you had to do for
Yeah.
reading, and transmuting that passion for literature, for books, for storytelling into you becoming a writer, all while being a full-time mom, like while actively raising kids. When you're entering the writing community for the first time, like as a writer, when you're trying to make yourself happen, what has your experience been with navigating the online space, with kind of integrating and declaring yourself as a writer? Did that imposter syndrome ever pop up? Was there any difficulties? Like, did you ever feel like you had to choose? What's your experience been like?
This is a great question. And I think everyone experiences imposter syndrome and it comes and goes in waves. Because one of the biggest things that's helped me is finding critique partners, writers that I know and trust that we can kind of swap chapters and take a look at each other's work. That has really helped me build my confidence. And that would be my biggest piece of advice if I were to like chat with a new writer. I would say find yourself a critique partner or a critique group if you can. I'm lucky enough that I have both, but find that community where you can interact with someone and share your struggles with them. And I was able to find that through social media. Had I not started my account, I wouldn't have found my critique partners that I work really well with. So that has definitely helped with the imposter syndrome, just having someone reassuring me, hey, you're really good at this. Your writing is really strong and you do this really well, where they can still acknowledge the weakness areas that I have and help me strengthen those. That has helped a ton. So if you can find a creative partner to work with you and show you your weaknesses and how to turn them into strengths, that does help with the imposter syndrome. But what I have found through social media is this is a really uplifting community, at least the writer side of things. I know the reader bookstagram side of things can be a little less uplifting. I know there's lots of crazy stuff going on there, but at least from my community that I have seen, the writers are all just like trying to help each other out. A lot of them are in the same space of vulnerability where they kind of feel weird about posting, but they feel the pressure to like build an online presence. So from what I've seen, it's a lot of really creative people who feel like they need to be online and they all kind of don't really know how to do it. And so we're all kind of working together to figure it out together. And that's been a really fun space to be a part of. So I have found it to be a really welcoming community. And that helps with the imposter syndrome as well, just to realize like a lot of us don't know what we're doing and we can kind of figure it out together. So that's super helpful.
Have you ever like received advice from other writers, even if they were bigger authors or anything, that really resonated with you? And if you have, what would that be? What would you pass on to somebody who might be wanting to get into writing for the first time?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've heard a few little tidbits of advice that have been really helpful. One of my favorites is that like first drafts are meant to be messy. And I think that's like, I know you mentioned you hated your first draft. I get that. It is really hard to go back and read my first draft and not just cringe at like every other line, just because I was brand new to this and I didn't know what I was doing. And I used a lot of cliches and I like my language was, you could just tell this was my first time writing fiction instead of academic writing, which is very different. And so I love this idea that when we're in the weeds of it, we don't see the masterpiece that we're creating. I think Rebecca Ross even compares it to like a tapestry where the author is on the backside, where you just see all of the tangled threads and it's an absolute mess. But it's really hard for us as the writer to see the beautiful front side that we're creating. And so it's helpful to kind of try and take a step back or get those other people's perspectives on your writing. But yeah, that advice of just like letting your first draft just exist and kind of embracing the messiness of it, that has really, really helped me because I could have read my first draft and thought, well, that was a terrible idea. I'm really bad at this. I should never try again. But instead, I had heard that advice and I thought, okay, this is messy, but that's okay. We can work with this. Like I see the parts of it that I really do like that make me smile when I read them. So I'm going to keep working on those areas. So yeah, that advice that you can let your drafts be messy has really helped me.
I really, really love the Rebecca Ross tapestry quote, and it made me
Yeah.
rethink the way that I approach writing because I do the exact same thing. For me, I don't know why, but like the imagery almost translated into the old school phone operators when they had like the like plugs and
Yeah.
things. Because I'm plugging and playing different parts in different sections to see what would work or what makes sense. And there's a little bit of direction that you get from the other line, which just tends to be like beta readers or even your actual audience. And that's kind of when you get to show the halfway mark in your art in a way of like the initial sketch and say, what do you like? What do you think? And
Mhm.
it's almost like being able to guide the pen in a way with what somebody is really excited about, what you find, even your kid when you guys were in the bookstore and he found the book that kind of resembled
Yeah.
yours. Adorable,
Yeah.
by the way.
That made me so happy. Yeah.
Yeah, like seeing the things that other people get excited about or that are memorable about the thing that you're creating make you want to lean into those good times more. And letting it be messy is sometimes giving somebody the whole table to pick from instead of trying to present them with what you think might be the best option.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, some of the ideas that you cut might have been someone's favorite. So it is really easy to be our harshest critics and to like think something is a little too out there and just go slash it and cut it out. But we tried something new for a reason, and sometimes that's where the really creative ideas spark. And so I know you have 9 projects that you're working through, so I'm excited for you to kind of go back through and find those elements that you do love and to kind of rehash them when you're ready. I think that's exciting.
Remember when I had a writing coaching client, and I was talking to her about her work, and she kept like deleting whole chunks or parts of her story. And the advice that I gave to her and that I would give to you and to anybody else who would be listening is you are writing somebody's favorite book. It hasn't found them yet, but you are writing somebody's favorite book. And for every chunk that you might be taking out because you aren't sure if it's good enough, you are deleting chapters of somebody's favorite book. You might be removing somebody's comfort character. Like let
Yeah.
them make that choice for you. You can decide. Like sometimes you do have to intuit that, and sometimes it's just the right choice. But sometimes you can like listen to them. You can let somebody else decide for you if this is something to love. Let their voice guide your feelings about something, especially if you're navigating imposter syndrome and self-doubt and you're really at the end of your rope. It's okay to get that encouragement. You are writing something that will be really good someday. It doesn't need to be now, but it will be one day and it will be worth it.
Oh my gosh, what an inspiring thought that like this could be someone's favorite book someday. That just gets me excited. That's so cool. I love
I was
that.
even, not to like go way, way back, but I was even going to ask you about if you've ever thought about people doing fan fiction of your work. I personally really love the idea of somebody making like a fan playlist or even a fan Pinterest board because I want to see if they typecast the characters in the same way that I typecast them if it was ever to be
Yeah,
a movie. And that gets me really, really excited to be like, you
that's
get
so
it.
fun.
I got
Okay, for me, it's character art. Like, because that is one of my favorite things about being on social media with the bookish world is I get to see all of this gorgeous character art of like fictional characters that I have just grown so attached to. And then these artists pour all of this love and time into creating them so I can visualize them. I'm so excited for when I can like start to commission art. I'm not quite there yet financially because I don't know how much it costs. I haven't even looked into it. But yeah, I'm excited to commission art someday. And then if I ever get fan art, I think that will be the moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is real. Like I've created characters that people connect with enough to pour this time into it that they wanted to visualize them. That would be the best thing I could see. Yeah, that would be really cool.
even your Instagram posts, the collages that you post are like you have a very great eye for design. I was thinking about asking you if you had like taken a design class or if that's just straight off the dome.
Thank you. I did work as a social media manager briefly. It started as an internship and then I was hired on full time. But one of the collages on my social media, my one of my critique partners made, and it's by far the most gorgeous one. So if you saw that one, that one's all credit goes to her. But yeah, as far as like design goes, I haven't taken design classes, but I did work as a content manager, and that involved a lot of social media stuff, but I wouldn't say I'm really great at it. I have a lot to learn for sure.
Gotcha. To round it up, speaking of your Instagram and the great things that you're doing, where can people find you? What can people expect out of you in the next little while? What can we think about in Project Dive? Where are we at? Where can we find you?
Well, with Project Dive, you will hopefully see a real title at some point in the near future, as soon as I commit to one. I have a couple ideas, but I kind of feel like it's like when you have a baby, I felt like I had to see the baby first before I really knew what their name should be. I feel like I have to get through, I'm doing like a full rewrite of the second half right now just to strengthen it. I feel like I have to see what it looks like, that full picture before I can like really narrow down what name I want it to have. Anyways, so I do think I'll plan on hopefully having beta readers soon. So if people want to find me, I'm only on Instagram right now because that's about as much as I can handle. But I'm Summer Weaver Writes on Instagram, and I'll hopefully be looking for beta readers in the near future. Definitely this year at some point.
Awesome. Summer, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much, Austin. I'm super excited about the myth and all the things you have going. I'm super excited. I can't wait.